In this tutorial video, I want to take you through the steps to repair a latch release problem with the rear hatch on these C-Class estates or station wagons. Typical of a problem you might see is you'll go to try to release the hatch with the lever handle here and nothing happens. And so is the case with this car. You pull on it, nothing happens. Even though the car is unlocked, got to make sure you use the key fob to unlock the car. Now in this case, the key fob works. So if you push on the button for the hatch on the key fob, it will release it. Now that's a little frustrating because every time you go to want to get into your hatch, you got to find the key. So you're thinking maybe I should get this fixed, and you're kind of freaking out thinking, oh man, what's this going to cost if I take it into the dealer or a mechanic to have this repaired? So a lot of people learn to live with it. So what I want to do is encourage you to maybe tackle this problem yourself and fix it. It could be simple, real simple. And even if it was expensive, it might not be more than $200 if you go ahead and do all the work yourself. So that's what I'm going to do in this video is get this opened up, take the cover off the back of the hatch, look at how the whole mechanism works. We're going to troubleshoot some problems and what could be the problem with a situation like this. So I'm going to dig in here. I'm going to show you all these little tips and tricks. One thing I will not be showing you though is how to get the hatch released if you can't get into it at all. Let's say the lever doesn't work, the key fob doesn't work, and you're stuck. Well, you can't fix anything unless you can get this to open. And I've seen this on the forums. People say, well, you got to stick a little key in there and turn it. Well, there is no place in the estate wagons to turn a little key in there to release the hatch in an emergency situation. But on the back side down there, there's a little cover. In this car, it's a gray cover. If you have black interior, it'll be a black cover. It's just a little plastic cover. You snap that off. Of course, you have to crawl back in there to get to it. And you can reach down in there and pull the lever and release the hatch. So that'll get it open. At that point, you can go to work. So let's dig in and I'll show you how I fix this one. I feel if you can get a good look at the back side of a panel before you remove it, it really makes it a lot easier. This can be a door panel, a hatch panel, a trunk panel, or whatever, because you need to see how it goes on in order to take it off. So here you can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plastic plugs that plug straight in. And then we have 2 metal clips. Now these metal clips can be a bear to get out. So you want to get a plastic pry tool right in there. This one was broken. So somebody had been in here before and the one up there was kind of bent out of shape. So somebody tried to put this panel back on and it didn't have these lined up properly. These are the tough ones, these 2 metal ones, because they don't want to come out easy. See, they're barbed and they go into that plastic. That's why you need to get a pry tool in there. But most of these, once you get all the pins out around the perimeter, and you can see why all these pins have to come out, because you have to pull out or down on this panel to release these 6 snaps, and then get a plastic pry tool up here right on either side of this hump and pry down on that to try to release these metal clips right here. So now that you see this, you know, you can go after removing this, and it makes it a lot easier too when you go to put it back on. Now that you've seen this rear panel removed, let's back up and I'll show you the steps you need to take to get that panel to snap off and not break any of those clips. The first thing you're going to need to do is remove all these plastic body plugs. That's right, these aren't cheap metal screws, these are plastic screws into a plastic body plug. There are 10 of them on this C-Class wagon here. They all have to come out because remember, this panel has to come straight down. You do not pry it down, you do not bend it down. The whole panel has to come straight down, snap down and off. Now the tools you're going to need are a Phillips screwdriver like that. You may need a needle nose pliers to get these out if they're stubborn, and then you're going to need some type of plastic tool to help you with those 2 forward metal clips that I showed you in the previous scene. So the first step is to just go around and remove all these plastic clips. Let me show you how to do this. You don't want to take the screw all the way out. You want to back the screw out until it's almost all the way out. If you take it all the way out, then I'm going to turn it in just a couple little turns and then take your needle nose pliers, or if you can get a hold of it with your fingers, I'll show the pliers, and you're going to pull it out as one unit. Now just leave it that way because that's the way you're going to reinstall it. So I'm going to do the next one in review. We'll run it out almost all the way. And like I say, if you feel it coming out, then just turn it back in a little bit. And there you go. So now you're going to do that with all 10 to get ready to pop that panel down. Let me share a little tip right here. If you have one of these plastic body plugs that won't come out, you don't want to get in there and try to pry it out. Often what happens is you'll take this plastic screw and back it out, and you just won't pull it out because these tend to get stripped out over time. So what you want to do is go get a sheet metal screw about that big, and you're not going to put this in very far because you don't want to damage the plug, but I'm just going to turn it in about half a turn, and you can feel it grab a hold of that plug. Then I grab this and I can pull the plug out, see, without damaging it. There's more than one way to do this, and I'm not going to pop this down because I already reinstalled it, but I'm just going to share with you a few tips. You do have a point right here which is an overlap seam, so you got to be careful about that. That needs to come straight down here. You've got to get past this latch assembly, so that's got to be pulled out, and this little handhold here has to slide out. So you want to work this thing together so it's all coming down. You don't want to just take this and pull this and pry this end down, or you're going to break those metal clips back here. So what I like to do is I like to come in on this one corner and I work this corner and snap this down so these snaps release, and then I'll go over to the other side over here and do the same. And then I can get this plastic tool in under here and pop those two areas that hold those two metal clips on, and then come forward here and just kind of bend this over the end here and get your hand up in here, kind of work your hand up here and get this clip and then get this clip off. So you can try it a couple different ways, but the important thing is you got to kind of work it together so in the end this whole panel is dropping straight down. Don't try to pry it off this way or pry it off that way. You're going to end up breaking some clips. Okay, right here you can see that electronic release mechanism, and if I move up on the inside of the hatch, I locate the inside of the release lever right above the license plate area, and notice this. There's no mechanical linkage between these two. This is an electric switch, and you can see the wiring running down and plugging into this electronic unit down here. So we could have a problem with the switch, we could have a problem with the wiring, and we could have a problem with that unit right here. So I started messing around with it. I said, let's see if this switch works. You can see when you pull that outside lever, this comes down, and you can look right in there and see a little micro switch. So I'm going to get a little screwdriver in here, and I'm going to push on the micro switch. Look at that. You hear that noise? Sure enough, there's something wrong right here. Then I decided to just grab this here and pull it all the way down. Listen to it release that latch electronically. So here's my problem right here. To remove this lever release and switch assembly, you're going to have to pull this cover off right here. The first thing you have to do is pull the license plate, because you're going to have to get this little bolt out. You're going to have to go from underside here. Watch as I struggle with this to get this out. Notice here that the nut just stays in place, and you have to pull this bolt out on the other side. Now once that's out, you can pop this out. I recommend using a plastic pry tool to get to these snaps. Okay. Let's look at the back of this so you can see where the snaps are. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 plastic snaps similar to the door panels that pop this on. But if you didn't know the center bolt was here, you'd really be in trouble. All right, now we can remove this switch by pulling these 2 screws out right here. These are T27 torque screws, and they come out fairly easily. Keep in mind that this isn't going to just pop right out because it has a rubber gasket right here, and that rubber gasket tends to get stuck up here on the outside of the hatch. So I recommend, once again, a little plastic pry tool to kind of break that seal loose. And you need to unplug it. There's a wiring plug right here, so we unplugged it and to pull this out. Now let's take it over on the bench and see if we can figure out how to fix that. Keep in mind that this isn't going to just pop right out because it has a rubber gasket right here, and that rubber gasket tends to get stuck up here on the outside of the hatch. So I recommend, once again, a little plastic pry tool to kind of break that seal loose. And you need to unplug it. There's a wiring plug right here, so we unplugged it and to pull this out. Now let's take it over on the bench and see if we can figure out how to fix that. Okay, let's take a close look at this together. Once again, if I pull on the lever from the outside, notice that this right here is not going far enough to push in that little micro switch there. But if I do it by hand, it comes over and just makes contact. So at first I thought maybe I need to do something to this, modify it, put some more thickness on the tip there. But then I got looking around here and I'm looking at this, I'm saying, look at this. This spring clip here. Usually spring clips like this are meant to hold in plugs so they don't come loose. And I went over and I looked at this and I thought, oh, look at that. The plug has come out. Sure enough, I was able to plug it in another 1/16 of an inch. Now look, when I lift the lever from the outside, the micro switch is depressing. Now I just have to figure out how to secure this little micro switch, and we're going to end up with the Dutch repair of the year. Well, I'm sure you noticed that spring clip was all messed up, appears to have been broken. Now, here's my hunch, okay? I have no proof, this is just my hunch. I think that this switch has been replaced, and some mechanic got in there, and when he removed the micro switch, he messed up this spring clip, and when he reinstalled the micro switch, did not connect it. So eventually over time, opening and closing, this lever pushed the micro switch back to the point where it was no longer depressing the switch enough to release the latch mechanism. Couple things here I want to point out. Maybe if you would have done this yourself, you might have been a little bit more careful about how you treated this spring clip. And just because it's been done at the shop, don't always assume that it has been done properly. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this back in the car and test it before I put the panels back on, but if you look closely here, you can now see the lever clearly depressing the end of that micro switch. I installed this release mechanism. Be sure and use a thread locker on these screws. It is possible for these to loosen up just because of the amount of movement with that lever. But before I put all these panels back on, I'm going to test it. So I'm just going to come in here with my little finger. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Such a little thing can cause a lot of frustration because you always have to have the key when you go to open the hatch. And now it's just walk over here as long as the car is unlocked and just release it like that. To put the panel back on, you want to slide it through this latch, get this in there, and get these holes lined up. And then you've got to get these edges in place right here. You get both of them in place. And then what you can do is just take your hand and give it a nice little wrap like that. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then I'm going to snug this one in on those metal ones. Okay, there you go. Now we'll go ahead and replace all the pins and we're done. When you're installing these plugs, the easiest way to do this, so you don't keep dropping them on the floor, is to just take the plastic screw and maybe start at like one thread, and then squeeze that together and go ahead and push it into the hole. Once it's in the hole, then you can get the screwdriver and tighten it down. Remember, you're not torquing these very tight or you'll strip them out. Just bring them down snug and that'll hold the plug in place. Being Dutch myself, I think you'll understand why I'm so excited about the repair that we just did here. Now you got to keep in mind, I had no idea that was going to be the problem when I opened up that hatch assembly. So I'm really excited. You know, think about this, okay? Just for a moment, think about this. What would this have cost if you would have taken it into a shop to have it fixed? Well, not knowing what the problem was, you're at the mercy of their diagnosis. And a lot of shops would say, well, I just want to make sure the problem's fixed, so let's give them a new micro switch and a new electronic latch assembly and call it good. So you would have come out of there with, you know, a $400, $500, $600 repair, and you wouldn't have known any different. You would have been maybe happy, maybe not happy that it was fixed. But I think this is probably a perfect illustration of what I'm trying to communicate. And I hope as you go about your own car troubleshooting and repair scenarios that you'll learn to apply the Dutch method as well.